Good evening, Board President again, members of the board. So I think Mr. Kwok did a phenomenal job. I was like listening to him about the FCMAT and the history. It, he did a pretty good summary, but I'll kind of explain a little bit more on the extraordinary audit. So the extraordinary audit is called AB 139 because it's an Assembly Bill 139 that usually any state agency, including LACO and oversight agency and the school board can request FCMAT to do. The extraordinary audit happens when there is allegations of misappropriation or fraud. So if you think that there is a misappropriation that's happening in the school district or a fraud that's happening in the school district, similar to the forensic audit that we did in the bond, FCMAT can come in and do that extraordinary audit. And Mr. Kwok mentioned about the Bassett. So there was an incident about allegation of fraud at that school district, and so FCMAT came in. So it had come in recent past to several school districts, Montebello being one of them in the recent past. The second kind of services they provide is the fiscal crisis, where if you are 3 times qualified, like repeat 3 times, if you self-certify as a qualified or the county puts you in the qualified category, or if you are negative, that means you are not able to meet your obligations within the next 1 year, FCMAT will come in. Usually we'll have a fiscal advisor that will, if we are negative certified, that usually will have the authority to overrule the school board on any budget matters or fiscal matters. So at that point of time, it's a kind of a pseudo takeover by the state because they don't want a repeat of what used to be the Richmond school districts. Now it's called West Contra Costa. And speaking of Richmond, the $100 million, Richmond changed its name to West Contra Costa, and West Contra Costa is still under the state receivership. It's been 35 years. So once you go into a state loan, it's very difficult to come out of that kind of situation. There have been like 7 or 8 districts persistently or consistently in that situation. So fiscal crisis can come in at the request of the board or the superintendent too. If the board or the superintendent feels that the district is not going to be able to meet its long-term obligation, you can do what we call a short-term FHRA, which is the Fiscal Health Risk Assessment. It's a very short assignment. They usually come in, they have a set of 30, 35 questions on governance as to how we do our budgets and do position control in the school districts, whether there is a way we hire person based on position control or not. So those are some of the things. And I can tell you one of the red flag in this school districts, this school district did not have position control and still does not have position control. So that will be one of the findings. But other than that, they can tell you that based on the trend of the school district, it is on a structural fiscal deficiency trend, and unless there are corrections, so they can give you that assurance that what I mentioned earlier is that we need to put some corrections in place. They can definitely come and certify that, hey, based on an independent review, that's our observation. Or they can differ from my perspective. They can say, no, the school district is good long-term, you don't need to worry. Or you need to put some corrective actions earlier than what we thought. So that's the fiscal health risk analysis. The third component that they do is management assistance. So superintendent is kind of mentioned on that piece. The management assistance team they do come in, and this is where they do a lot of work. It's usually a 3 to 4 month assignment. They can hone in on a specific department. So if you ask for management assistance, they will ask you like, what department do you want it on? Or what are you worried about? Is it like special ed expenditures, special ed staffing, or is it finance, fiscal services staffing, or is it maintenance, operation, and transportation. So they can do specific audit. So they will bring in expert from transportation. If you are doing a MOT study, or they can bring in special ed folks that have worked in several school districts in the state, and then they can compare our services to other school districts, and they can tell you, well, you are over identifying students, or your services are under par, over par, you are providing more than what we need to. So they do that for cost cutting purpose, for benchmarking purpose, for organizational comparison. And they do it for different departments except for core ed services, because FCMAT doesn't do with the core ed services. They do HR, special ed, and all business services. The third type of assessment is they do some professional training also on ASBs, and also multi-year projections and stuff like that for fiscal services folks. But that's the professional development piece. So when Mr. Kwok mentioned the audit comes only with what we call the AB 139 extraordinary audit, that is for misappropriations or allegation fraud. Otherwise, it's called assessment, which is the fiscal crisis or fiscal health risk assessment. And they will run the same numbers that we have in our adopted budget, first interim, second interim. And then they will go through the questionnaire and tell you that these are the red flags. So it's a response based on 30 questions. Uh, Weightage is given to each, and based on that, they will assign you that, hey, the district is good, but look out for certain trends going forward, or you need to kind of look at the budget and cut expenses.